Good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to Fall High Point Market. IMC, International Market Centers and Design on High Point Market presents today's presentation of Your Brand, Promoting, Licensing, and Protecting It. This presentation is also in partnership with Alden Park Showroom and thehome.com with Ellen Geffen. I'm Kimberly Porter, the Senior Programming Manager for IMC and co-host for the webinar today. As a reminder, if you would like more information on our upcoming webinars, Open Showrooms and High Point Market, which starts October 13th and runs through the 21st, please visit our website at imchighpointmarket.com. This presentation is CEU accredited, and information will be emailed out to those who registered through Zoom. You can expect that in your email most likely tomorrow. We will have a question and answer available after kind of the discussion. So if you have any questions, you can put those in by the Q&A. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Well, welcome and thank you everyone for joining us. We have a great team to talk with you about promoting, branding, and licensing and how you can help protect it and become even more influential in what you do. I want to first introduce myself. My husband and I have a production company, Geffen Productions. We produced a TV show for the furniture market for years, talking about new products and trends for the industry. We now are doing it on thehome.com. If you are not a subscriber, please do that. We help brands, designers, retailers help to get their stories out. And so I'm here helping as someone who has worked with all of these folks to help make sure that you get the information. What I'm loving about right now is that we are able to help everyone and join hands together to help everyone grow their own brands and be a better industry. So first I want to say we have Yvette Rios. If you don't know Yvette, shame on you. She is a designer. She is an influencer. She is on TV all the time. She's on the internet. She does a great job not only with giving information to consumers, but promoting brands. So she's going to be talking with us about that. Steve Davies is an attorney. He will help give us information about crossing your T's, dotting your I's, how to stay out of trouble, what you should know, what questions you should ask as you are looking at licensing, promoting, and branding yourself. And then we have Greg Wyman, and I've known Greg for years. I first met him, I believe, when he was working with B. Smith, with Jewel Branding, they work with clients and designers to help make sure that they are together with the right brands and promoting each other and helping each other grow. So thank you all for being with us. I appreciate it. And I think this will be a great and lively discussion. I do want to start with Yvette first and ask about, you've been doing this for a while. You have grown yourself, you have grown your company and what you're doing, and talk with designers and those on this webinar with us about what it took for you to get there and what suggestions you have as people are now trying to do it in a new age that we're coming up to with learning about promoting and licensing themselves.
Terrific. Well, thank you all so much for being here. It's always so phenomenal to be able to speak to fellow designers and other creatives because those are my people. You guys are my tribe. You know, the main thing is that I want to let you guys know that this is our time right now. I mean, the timing could not be better. I mean, obviously there are horrific things happening all over the world and it is what it is, but you know, the timing could not be better for people in our, you know, expertise with our knowledge and with our capabilities. People really want to know how their homes can, you know, fulfill all of the things that they need them to. You know, they need to be our sanctuaries, the places where we work, the places where we, you know, teach our children, where we connect with the people we love. And that's, you know, that's what we do as designers. We create spaces where people can, you know, live the most beautiful lives that they can. So I want to just let all of you know, if you've been on the fence about like trying to figure out how to build your brand and you've been trying to figure out where you're going to put your efforts in terms of like, you know, if you had the entire, you know, fiscal year, I would say now is the time to really focus your energy, any marketing dollars you have to build your brand, because it is so, so crucial, and the world needs to hear from all of you right now. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. How I got started is I started in like home renovation television. At the time, Trading Spaces was on TLC. There were lots of kind of home renovation shows. And I had studied design at Parsons School of Design. I didn't get a full degree, but I got a certificate in interior design. Kudos to all of you that are totally accredited designers, because I think that is so absolutely fabulous. So I say I play a designer on television, but not in the super accredited way. So I'm just, first of all, to distinguish myself that way. But so I started that way, and then kind of pivoted a little bit towards food. I'm Puerto Rican, and I came from a family where food, entertaining, home was like very much like a priority. So I always cooked a lot with my mom and my grandma. So pivoting and doing a lot more food it made a lot of sense. So now I sort of sit in the crossroads of being an interior designer and doing lots of contributions to shows like the Today Show and things like that. And being more of a lifestyle expert and really speaking to people about how they can live a more beautiful and affordable and effortless life across like all of the platforms. So that's a little bit about me. And yeah, I'm really excited to help all of you make the most of this moment, because, the timing is perfect for us.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I want to say today I was in my car, and on NPR, I heard one of the designers that I've interviewed in the past talking. So don't just think of this as television. Don't just think about it of your website. It has grown to be so much more than that. To NPR to have a story, as opposed to just TLC or HGTV or even your own YouTube website or other sites. There are so many opportunities out there, and you really should take advantage of it. Greg, let's just talk about, as someone who works in branding, everyone thinks they need a branding person to help them get to where they're going. Can you talk a little bit about where you fit into this whole puzzle as we're trying to help promote, as designers are trying to help promote themselves and brands?
Sure. I'll give you a little story to begin with, how I got into the furniture business with B. Smith. So B. Smith was a television host like Yvette. She had a restaurant, a number of restaurants, and she wanted to get into the product business. So through my connections, and that's really what I do, and I have a background in merchandising and home, I found her a home at Bed Bath & Beyond, which was very exciting, working with the merchants, building that brand. And then she said, I'd like to get into the furniture business. And I didn't know anyone in the furniture business, and I'm in the connection business. So what I did was, she said, Greg, I know somebody who works at this furniture store. Why don't we talk to him? So I talked to this gentleman, who then took me over to somebody. Next thing I know, I'm in High Point, and they brought me to Thomasville Furniture, and I brought her in that way through one person after the other. And what you're looking to do, what I'm looking to do, is solve a problem. I'm going to find a way of seeing what is your business about, what, as a designer, what is the story you're telling, and see if I can marry those stories so the designer can solve an issue, and then the manufacturer or the importer, he needs to find a way into a retailer, and the retailer has an issue, and then we can see if we can solve all those issues and get you in there. So it's a multi-step process, but part of what I do is try to find the connecting points, the relationships. It's a long-term process. It's like any kind of relationship. It's not going to happen overnight. I do think you have to have a story to tell. I think authenticity today is so important. Not just, people talk about celebrities that may be attractive, but they don't have a story to tell. And in the home business, I think more than any other business, they're looking for something authentic, something that solves something, something that does something. So when we work with somebody, if you have a point of view, Yvette has a point of view. If you have a story to tell, and that story marries up with what a manufacturer can do, they've got to be able to do what it is you need them to do in a way that's going to just bring you to the market. Then I try to put that together, because my background being in home, I can feel those differences. I'm kind of part of the process without actually, I don't want to be a cook in the kitchen. That would be too many cooks. I try to be just somebody who directs you into the kitchen and let the cooks take over. So that's kind of what I do.
Okay, and so, the next thing is really about when do you have to or need to bring in an attorney, Stephen? So many people think they can maybe they don't get a licensing agent because Greg can't, or other licensing firms can't represent anyone. So a lot of times it is about a connection. I know so-and-so, let me talk with them. And I know of a couple of lines that have happened that way. When does an attorney need to come in, and what suggestions do you have because designers are concerned about what it's going to cost to talk to an attorney. When should you talk to an attorney, and what should you get out of it?
Well, it's always best, and often the first point when it's important to identify an attorney that people miss is if you're starting a design business with someone else. There's nothing that prevents you legally from just going into business with someone and holding yourself forth as a business, as they say. But like marriages, many businesses end in divorce, and by identifying an attorney, and maybe even a different attorney from your partner at that time, you can create an agreement that's fair for both of you and provides what will happen if the company breaks up, how the clients might be distributed, and all the things like that that are going to save a lot of fighting and a lot of chaos, and spending less pleasant attorneys more money later down the line. So I think that's always an important time, if you can afford one, to identify an attorney, is if you're starting a business and you are not the only person in that business. When you're starting a business as a designer, like in any business, if you can afford to do it, it's better to incorporate in some way. And that's going to depend on what your needs are, whether you might be a sole member in a limited liability corporation, or if you anticipate having payroll and more staff, there might be something else that's more appropriate. So when you can afford to pay someone to put that together, that's an important thing to do too. And the costs of that vary quite a good deal from state to state. A limited liability corporation really isn't any different than just having a simple partnership with someone. The difference is whether anybody suing the corporation is able to reach the personal assets of the partners or the partners' corporations. So if you can afford to do it, that's a good protection to have. It can also serve sometimes as a marketing tool. If you're a client and you're having an interior designer into your home, that's a position of trust, and seeing an LLC or an incorporation behind someone's name can give them an additional level of confidence. The costs on doing something like that vary from state to state. The difficulty in doing them also varies in state to state. Often, if you already have an accountant in place, they can set that up for you. Depending on who you are and what state you're in, or forming the corporation in, it may be something you're even able to do on your own. But if you can afford to talk to an attorney, they can actually help you with the clauses that go into those agreements. You can put bylaws in the LLC. You can provide what happens when the company dissolves. And I think that's probably the best time to get an attorney involved if you can. If you're going it on your own, or if you're in a partnership and you suddenly have very good luck and are presented with a big client, that's another time when it makes sense to have an attorney. Negotiating every single deal you negotiate may not be practical to pay an attorney that much. And there's some pretty simple things that you can do to protect yourself in terms of what you do if you're allowing people to show your work on social media. And that's something that I can get a little more into later on.
Okay. So let's, Yvette, go back to you, kind of doing these circles, but feel free to jump in, guys, as you feel free. When we're looking at promoting and licensing, where is the difference for you about licensing versus working with companies? I know you just did something for coffee yesterday with someone, and I know that you've done a deck recently. What do you think that's done for you, and where do you think a designer should focus on that versus I believe there are so many designers who have gone down what I call a rabbit hole trying to get a licensed collection. And what it's done is given them great publicity, and it's also given the brand a great story. But in the end, let's say the collection doesn't work and they've taken their eye off the ball. So when is it important to do this versus to think maybe this isn't the right time?
Yes. So I think one of the things that we as designers can sort of, pivot ourselves and begin to do is to see ourselves more as creative directors than just, designers. So we're creative directors of our own business, but then you can be a creative director for other brands to help them, just present their product in a different way, get different clients, get a new audience, all of that stuff. And that's sort of like the influencer side of things. I hate to use that term because honestly, we are like in a post-influencer era, and it's more about people with tried and true experience and with hands-on knowledge like all of you. Basically what I think is, in terms of my licensing business, I'm still very young in the licensing space. Greg, I work with Greg regularly. He's my agent at Jewel Branding, and they've just been phenomenal at trying to find opportunities for me and figuring out where the Yvette Rios product line could live and what categories, et cetera, et cetera. So I think licensing is obviously a very natural extension because we are creative people and we know where there's holes in the market. So it's natural for us to want to go in and design pieces to fill those gaps. And you're absolutely right, Ellen. It's like, it's a tremendous amount of work. The reality is, if you are going to put your own product line out there, you have to do the designs. A lot of times you have to do the shop drawings. You have to create all of the marketing materials to show the vendors how you would position the product. That's not the kind of work that they'll do. That's on you and your team. So if you're a one-person show, just keep that in mind. It's a lot of work. So I think for me, the lower hanging fruit and licensing being like one of the things that as designers, we should all, aspire to try to do. And obviously there is money in there, not as much as I was hoping that there is, but there's still, that residual income, which I think we all want. But the lower hanging fruit is addressing and working with brands to help them get a different set of eyes and a different perspective and a different look and feel to their product. And the reality is brands need us. It's a really fun way to make money. It actually is, it's a great way to make money, and it's very useful right now, especially. So I would say that, you kind of want to, if you're interested in using social media and using, what you can create to really reach out to brands and get some, branded integrations and things like that, you really want to think about like, how can you position a product or a service differently than it's being presented, and reach out to the brand and say like, hey, this is the kind of thing that I do. And I really feel like I could open up your market by doing X, Y, and Z for you. And that's kind of the new frontier, I think, for designers and for experts like us. And it can be very, very lucrative.
So Greg, on that, Stan, when would a designer need to work with a branding agent versus reach out on their own?
So, it kind of really depends on where they are. So I've met people, designers who are making their own stuff to, quite frankly, they have their own little company and they're making something themselves, and them, and they bring them to market. Licensing does this for them. If particular you're making whatever that product category is and you don't want to have the investment in that, I find a manufacturer to make that for you. You're not making it yourself. I find someone to do that for you. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit. Now, if you're making that product today and you want to expand to other things that you have a vision for, there's a good fit for, you think there's a market for, well, that's licensing. You can't do those things. If you were yourself, let's say, making upholstered chairs, or you were making whatever this thing was and you wanted to get into dinnerware, you don't make dinnerware. I find the dinnerware company, we put that together. That's licensing. The challenge is you have to be, as Yvette said, you have to really bring something to the table and fill a need, That company who makes dinnerware has a staff of designers. You need to bring something that they're not doing in a market that opens for them. It's complicated. I think when you look at where you are on any spectrum, first you have to get the work. You have to do the work. You have to say something that nobody else is saying, and there has to be an audience for what it is you're saying. It's easy enough. I always tell people, get out into the market, go look, go see it. Then you'll realize, oh my gosh, everybody else is doing the same thing. That's not really going to be easy to license. So even today, as we were talking about the Instagram followers on an influencer, that's not going to be enough if you don't actually say something. So those are the keys for me. I look at somebody, every situation is different, I think.
And what I want to say is, depending upon where you live, I think sometimes your focal point is based on where you live, and you really have to get out, and it's hard to get out now. So it is online that you can get out to look for that. And from that standpoint, Stephen, let's talk about from a legal standpoint, if you see something you like and you just put it out there on social, where does it help or hurt a designer to promote brands, talk about brands, etc., as they're trying to build their brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and the sort of common knowledge of that has changed quite a bit over the last few years. I wanted to underscore something that Yvette and Greg both said, which is that we are moving past a world in which people are impressed by the number of social media followers that you have. It's moving away from that again and again into a world of experts. All kinds of businesses are realizing that Instagram followers don't necessarily translate into good advertising when paid and an influencer anymore. People are sort of over that experience. So developing yourself as an expert is going to be a great way to empower any social media that you do. Because if you take that tone, not necessarily in a stuffy way, there's going to be more of a chance, whatever somebody's looking at, that they hearken back to you. Interior design is a tough business in terms of copywriting or trademarking or patenting the work that you do. Well, it might be technically possible to copyright the design of a room, for example, that you've done for a client. Generally, the client is going to insist on the right to share those photos, though thankfully they're not as often going to refuse you the right to use them as they used to. And you're not going to have much control over where your images go because of that. Anything that you did do to protect your design work would be expensive and actually difficult to implement in practicality. So the way that a lawyer can help and the way you can help yourself when putting anything on social media is thinking like a lawyer. The way it works right now, no one can sue you for putting up something on social media that might be your image. They can, let's say you post a video on YouTube that's a walkthrough of somebody else's design of a home, either the owner of the model home or the actual home, or the designer would send an email to YouTube, Instagram, or whoever saying, please take that down. It then is taken down automatically by the company, and the onus is on you to prove that you actually have the right to put that work up. Because having work on social media can help direct traffic and therefore purchases towards a company, often they're not actually going to patrol that. They're going to be happy that you've put that up there. So I don't think generally there's anything wrong with putting up images that inspire you. But when you do that, or when you put up images of your own, and when you're negotiating contracts that involve social media, either with yourself or through an attorney, you want to, as best as you can, control how that image is going to reference you. So if it's a design that you've created, you want to make sure that you're credited as a designer. And if you know the photographer who's taken the image, you want to try as best you can to make sure that they're credited as the photographer. You also want to make sure that any social media handles that you use appear when they post it, so that traffic is directed back to you. To copyright an image that you've created of a room, or in essence, copywriting the actual interior design you've created, is very difficult to do. So somewhat paradoxically, the best thing you can do to profit from an image of yours that's going to live online is to make sure that it's shared as much as possible, but only if you're able, through a contract, or even worse comes to worse, an oral agreement, ensure as best that you can that you're going to receive proper credit and the proper social media handles. Because that way, every time it's shared from there, that work will point back to you. This is specific advice to you as an interior designer, right? If you were a photographer or a fine artist, how you would want your work to exist online might be a little different. But you're not in the business of selling photos of the rooms that you create. You're in the business of obtaining more awareness of your brand as an interior designer. And most of all, you're in the business of charging for interior design services. So get it out there, but as much as you can, make sure it points back to you. And if you're putting up somebody else's images, credit them, and also make sure it points back to you so that they're more likely to share it and you're more likely to get that that attention and that base of potential clients online.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to just, can I just like interject real quick on what Stephen was saying? Because I think this is like a classic social media mistake that everybody makes. And that is like, you know, you feel the obligation to sort of broadcast what you're doing, your projects. And what Stephen is saying makes so much sense. You know, the social, I know that this is not necessarily a talk specifically about social media, but social media has the word social right in the name of it, which implies that it's a give and take relationship. So if you want your images of a kitchen that you renovated and you used a new color that you feel like is not really out there and it's really going to make a splash, if you want people to share that, and the sharing is all, you know, all that visibility is so crucial, you have to share other people's work too. So it's just an important part of the whole like social media business, is that we have to amplify each other's projects, voices, style, design, all of that stuff, so that then when we have a project or we have something we want to push out, we have those relationships that will post and promote and amplify all the things that we do.
And a good way to think of it, if you are stuck negotiating a contract on your own without an attorney, it's great to have one, especially if it's a big deal. If it's a quick thing, it's social media, you might not have that luxury, even if you have access to an attorney, is to think about mirroring what they're asking for. If they want to share your image and they want to, then you want them to mirror that in return. Like they say, you have to share this, you want them to share it too. You know, their brand name is going to be on it. You want your name on it too. Their social media handle is going to be on it. You want yours on it too. And in a very simple way, that's a way you can look out for yourself if you're negotiating one of these social media deals. I'm sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to.
Well, you know, I was thinking the same thing. When you were talking about images, a lot of things in High Point might be an artist, an actual artist that has her first stop or his first stop is to have that image in wall art. And there's showrooms all over High Point which will have wall art, and those are that's licensing. So all those images, obviously an attorney would make sure all those images are protected, and the licensing agent would make sure that those images get up. First stop is probably a wall art company who will take and reproduce your images so that people can buy, and you would make money licensing royalty off of that. The next thing I would probably do is if I or your agent looked at them and thought, oh my gosh, those images would be great on tablecloths, or they'd be great as upholstery for furniture. Then we license it to that company, and then you're making money off of that. And then it all starts off, you have something to say. Social media will tell you there's something to say. You'll get a reaction in this day and age, but that's really a little bit in High Point on some level is almost a first stop for a lot of them. whether I can't do it as much of, you can do it from photography, but certainly from an artist standpoint, if they're doing unique work and there is an audience for that. And I'll tell you a funny one. I was in a showroom one day and they had all this wall art, and there's many showrooms with wall art. And I said, what distinguishes your wall art from the guy down the hall? He said, we have the best nudes. And I said, oh, I guess that's it, but I can't license that more than what you're doing. So I think that's what it is. You look at it, you say, is there a world beyond this? I will then find somebody to go beyond it, and you're making money. And the best thing, like Yvette is saying, is the best thing about royalty or licensing, if it does work, it will work for years. If it is something because a manufacturer doesn't want to change and a retailer doesn't want to take something off the floor that's selling. But that's what's going to happen. You're going to find something that's going to work, if we're all lucky, and it will stay there. So that's kind of my thing. When you're looking at those images, I would always recommend having an attorney make sure those images are protected. The last thing you'd want is that image that went on betting for someone to have knocked us off.
And
That's a problem.
Then I just want to tell a quick story, which is years ago, Jenna Hall did licensing, and she was the first one, I believe, to bring in multiple companies. She brought in a suitcase company because she had done fabric for a company. Then she did throws, stuff that was, the suitcase company was not part of home, but that's how broad licensing can go and branding can go for you. So, you know, don't think just about home. I think that's a small part of what you can do. That's where the licensing can come through for you. As Yvette said, even going to the food area, which is very cool. So Yvette, sometimes you think, if I knew now what I knew then, and yet we've had so many changes happening, what would you do differently, or what would you suggest moving forward for designers?
Well, I think, you know, specifically, like, as we're trying to leverage, you know, all of the digital platforms that are out there to build our business and our brand. So if I was specifically to talk about that, I think the number one thing that I want to impress upon you guys is that, you know, the first thing is, you know, obviously now is the time. So, and the second thing is that you try to be as transparent and authentic as possible. And I cannot overstate that. And I came to this business, and specifically media, at a time where it was really important to be like very poised and to be, you know, not offend anybody, and to, you know, just have a very neutral, you know, position, and not be, you know, wacky, wild, or different as much as that is the case now. So I think that as you're doing your projects, you know, and I struggle with this so much, because sometimes because we're visual people, you take a photograph and you're like, okay, there was like a stack of papers in the corner, or like my kid ran through that photo, or there's dishes in the sink. I don't want to show that. I want to urge all of you to just kind of stop doing that and be willing to show where things are in the process, where they are in progress. Really take the time to shoot video of yourself, you know, vlog, you know, video blog, but you don't have to necessarily do that for YouTube, but like use Instagram live when you're on set, or when you're at a project and you're like, oh my gosh, these curtains just came in, but they were, you know, 2 inches too short, and all of the drama and that unfolds there. But then the goal is to show people how you navigate, and how you find solutions, and how you think creatively, and how you know, comport yourself, because that's what is going to build that loyal following that then you can roll over into meetings with branding experts like Greg, and roll into building a bigger business for yourself, because people want you, they want to relate to you, they want to see what your life is like, and they want that connection. So just don't censor yourself. And I wish I had done more of that earlier on, and I'm just kind of learning that lesson now, but I think all of you can take that and run with it.
And I would say to everyone, I did a Facebook Live. Again, that was my I didn't mean to do this. I didn't know I was going to do it. As I was going through pre-market, I just did Facebook Live with my phone. And I want you to know that when we first started doing our TV show, people used to think we would walk in with, I bet you there were 8 of us, including a makeup person with us for the person I was interviewing. And where we've gone down to now is I'm holding my phone. So I went way down, but people like the authenticness of it. And so be real. I totally agree with Yvette. You need to do this because it is real. Give them the information that they need to know that if you're doing a remodel, okay, life happens. That's what I call it. Life happens. The child runs through. That's what's happening right now because you're teaching your kids. All of a sudden they need you because school's saying, I need to give you this right now. So don't worry about being so perfect because there is no one who's perfect. In that same sense, as we're looking at branding and licensing, what do you think the challenges are going to be for the future? Yes, influencer, I agree, is not about the numbers anymore. It's not about the percentages. I think we've kind of gone through that, and it's going to become more, a little, not so much buttoned up, but real. I mean, Betty Crocker was real. Everyone wanted to be Betty Crocker, but they weren't, but that was what, you know, we had an aspiration to. Where do you think that circle is going to go at this point?
For me, I think there's going to be a lot of clutter in the market. I think with the web and the number of brands or designers or whatever entity is going to fill, because that is infinite, the amount of space. You remember, retail is a finite amount of shelf space. The web has infinite. And I think, how do you fight through that all that clutter? What is it that you're saying that brings an audience to them? That's going to be the challenge when retailers, the traditional retailers that we all have known, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the change of the market, begin to adapt and change, and there's less shelf space. What are you saying to bring somebody out there? And I think that's what's going to happen. I think that there's going to be a big opportunity. There exists even a big opportunity right now for brands. There really is. I think people are hungry for things that make sense. And the older brands that we all knew, I don't think they really resonate as much with this younger audience as something that comes in the market, says something, and then people react to it. I think that's what's happening. I think that if you're the same old and you've done it for years, I don't think it's going to mean anything in a few years. I think it's going to mean nothing. You know, look at the major brands that you know about who are kind of going away. Even the retailers kind of going away because retailers used to house brands and they're not going to be there. So what are you doing? You're going to have to either open up your own shop. You're going to tell your own story that way. That might happen. Web and your own store. It could potentially happen. And I think regional and small, I think go small. I mean, that's my view. And then build up from there. This kind of mass market, I think, has less relevance today. I think people are looking for their own unique story. And I don't think so. You know, the work is going to be getting your story, getting it down to me.
Stephen, I guess one of the things that I think is interesting is you and I talked about this, 2 things. One is that from a designer standpoint, sometimes they don't want to spend the money for an attorney, and yet that is where they can keep themselves out of trouble, and they want to be paid at that level. So we need to look at partnerships there. But the other thing is that for people to realize that your attorney, while you're in New York, you have to be licensed in another state to practice in another state. As a designer, you can practice wherever you are, depending upon the accreditation.
Right.
You can't sign contracts like an architect. But can you talk a little bit about that so that people don't get themselves?
Sure. I mean, it's generally not a problem you're going to run into. Is naturally you're going to find a local person anyway. But you know, and there are certain areas of law like copyright that are federal. And you might be able, if you're swimming in a really big pond, in a better position getting sort of a hot shot New York licensing attorney than you would be getting the local person. But I think that everything that Greg said is absolutely true. And in thinking small, thinking local, thinking personal, you're generally going to be better off starting out with a local attorney too. The increasing power of the internet, of social media, globalization have created some real challenges for the design industry. It's very difficult to protect the things that you do internationally. the popularization now of design aggregation sites where everybody will post images that inspire them, but then these end up being some kind of flow through marketing, can quickly lead to knockoffs. You can put an image of something that you've done online that's, let's say, an old pattern, and you've meticulously researched, Scottish heraldry patterns for the 1800s. Well, it's too old to copyright. Even a lot of the old things that Polo and some of these companies have done are starting to fall out of the copyright realm if they've been around long enough. And this might be another reason that some of the big old guard you've been around for 200 years. Some of your greatest hits are going to be things that now anybody can do because that pattern's now in the public domain. So staying personal to who you are and staying local when you start are going to be the best things that you can do, like Yvette and Greg are saying, to protect your product. Because frankly, as interior designers, the law is failing all of you right now to a certain extent. It's pretty ungainly when it comes to you in a lot of areas. In patterns, very little you do can be patented. There's certain limits to trademarks and word marks. You can't protect a pattern or a piece of art with that. So the best protection is actually not a legal one. It's staying close to your local market and staying close to who you are personally, because people are going to gravitate to you because you're local or because you're a part of a particular community, whether it's religious or ethnic or a Comic Con or the Society for Creative Anachronisms. The world is becoming very specialized, and staying true to that and true to where you actually are physically is going to provide better protection for what you do, even than having a great lawyer, I think, like Greg was saying.
So Yvette, from a promoting standpoint, I know you talked about helping each other out, and that's one of the things that social aspect of it is helping each other out. But there's also new ways of doing it. So video is another way. I said there's someone was on NPR. Podcasts are another way. Where do you see new ways of promoting yourself coming to or going towards?
So I think that one of the ways to do it is to work with brands, and I don't necessarily mean like always where they're paying you to endorse their product. That's obviously one way to do it. But if there are things that you use and you like, there's a particular chair that you keep specifying over and over again because it's just great for tall men and it's really comfortable. Go ahead and tell people about that. Don't feel like you need to make things your little trade secret. Broadcast it and let people know, oh, I love, this, Alden Parks chair. It's fabulous. It's so comfortable. It comes in all these different colors and finishes, because then a company like Alden Parks will pick that up and say, oh my gosh, designer Yvette Rios, talked about her chair and how she loved it so much. This is fabulous. So in that way, you kind of layer and layer and layer, building your brand. And so I think that that's an important way to do it, is just letting your audience, letting people know what are those things that you interact with that you love. And it can spill outside of design. It can be like, my daughter has celiac disease and I love this particular gluten-free pancake mix, and it's fabulous. And I use it every, weekend and everybody loves it. They can't tell it's not, doesn't have gluten, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing is just a great way to just amplify your brand. So I feel like that's going to be a lot more of what I see, and that's the real opportunity. It doesn't cost you any money, and it's just a way to get free advertising and access to different markets.
So before we go on, I do want to say, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat box. Kim is looking for those also. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. One of the things I had gone to Yvette, I went with my daughter because she wanted to be a beauty influencer or look at that, was something called BeautyCon. And the idea of that was I didn't even know what it was. West Elm was there, and I sat there and thought, oh my God, how come we're not seeing more people in the design home industries here? Because these are all these women, and there were all these young girls. These are potential for the future. Where else are you looking to in order to grow and promote your brand?
I mean, I think one of the things you have to think about is like, what are those kind of movements that are happening in cultural movements, you know, and one of them is, I think young people are becoming much more, you know, they're just naturally more concerned about climate change and, you know, sustainability and all of, you know, trying to just make sure that we have as little of an impact negatively on the world as possible. So just kind of figuring out what are those like burgeoning movements and trying to find a way to make yourself relevant to those people. So if, you know, if the environment is something that really is important to you, it certainly is important to me, just really creating content, reaching out to people within that industry, within that movement to say like, oh, you know, I found this great way to, you know, rehab you know, a chair that, you know, everybody throws out. I found like a great way to rehab it so that there's less, you know, landfill waste, and just figuring out what those markets are. I mean, I think a big trend, like I said, is environmentalism, you know, sustainability. I think another one is just, you know, really paring down our belongings and just making sure that we just have things that we love. I think there's a real movement towards like higher quality pieces, more investment pieces versus disposable things. So I think that that's something that that really resonates. Like if you know, created content or you're focusing on like how to help people pare things down and how to pick that one sofa that you're going to keep for the next 20 years, like that kind of stuff I think is super relevant right now. So really like, you know, and I think when you're thinking about all of this stuff and you're trying to build your marketing strategy, it's really important to just like step back from everything and just like, if you can, give yourself a couple of hours and just sit by yourself in quiet if you can, and really think about like, where do you see things going? Where do you see us going as a culture? What are those trends that you see happening? Because if you're able to position yourself in front of that stuff, you're going to have a much more long-lived career, and you're going to be that much more relevant to, you know, all of the young people that are entering the market every day.
I think we would be, it would be inappropriate of us not to bring up something you talked about. Right now is a time for designers. It is a time to get brands out. It's also a time to look at diversity in our industry.
Yes,
we don't
absolutely.
Talk a lot about. So if you could talk about the importance of bringing diversity into our industry from a designer standpoint, not for anyone who is Caucasian to be afraid of, but, you know, to help embrace everyone here from all sorts of points of life. Can you talk to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you know, that kind of goes back to, you know, this need for transparency in what we create and what we put out there, because, you know, all of our individual struggles and all of the, you know, conditions that we have to face could be inspirational to other people. You know, if you have, you know, a special needs child at home and you've adapted your living space to make it comfortable for him or her, or to allow them to, live their most fulfilled life, you know, that is diversity, you know, and expressing that and showing people how you do that is so important. You know, the world is changing. People are all different colors, and people have all different lifestyles. And I mean, they always have, but now people are more open and willing to live their lives and be authentic in their spaces. So it's very, very important that you show all of those different you know, nuances and differences in your personal home, because it's going to allow other people to relate. And, you know, in terms of addressing this big gap that happens in the design industry as far as you know, racial equality and exposure and all of that. It's a huge issue in the design industry. And I urge you to try to find designers that are, you know, people of color, that are, that you love their work, you like what they do, and just reach out to them, send them a message and say like, hey, I love what you do. Can we collaborate? I would love to, you know, amplify your voice. I would love to just, you know, show the world what it is that you do. And I think that that is just a really important way that we can just continue to show people that everybody, you know, needs a home that reflects who they are and what they do. And we all bring so much to the table. And I think that that's just really crucial right now.
I think in terms of one of the things of the title is promoting and branding. That collaboration is very important. One of the things that we do is work with influencers and designers. I'm working with someone like, because they need the video and they have the opportunity to talk to consumers in a way that we want to on the home, we're collaborating. We don't
Yes.
see it as anything other than a partnership. What can I do to help build you up also? So I would also urge you to look for collaboration in lots of different ways, whether it's with a brand or a fellow designer or a media person or whatever it is. So I think that's an opportunity also. Stephen, for you, one last question, because we're getting towards the end of where we need to be, is what do you think is the one thing that you would suggest to designers that they really take light of and look at as they are moving forward, looking at promoting and branding themselves? I can't hear you. Sorry. Hold on.
He's
Okay, he's
Okay,
muted.
I think I got
There
it.
you go.
You
There
hear
you
me?
go. Yes,
Sorry, I bumped the thing.
that's okay.
So it's important to spend a little time investing in the boring stuff. You don't want to be in a situation where suddenly you're ready to go and you land this awesome client and they want you to carry liability insurance, and then you call an insurance broker and they say, "Ooh, you're going to have to be a corporation to have the liability insurance." If you have the money to do it, spend a little time with a lawyer to get an incorporation in place and to get a contract in place that provides something that's a little bit tiered, which is going to protect you from doing work for free and protect you as much as you can from having your ideas stolen in the realm of a traditional design client. As a beginning designer, it's way more likely, right, that you're going to get a great private client that's going to help you build your business and allow you to get licensing than you're going to start out with the licensing. And regrettably, now that we have the internet and design sources are easily identifiable on the internet, you do have unscrupulous clients who will want you to, for free, come up with a floor plan and a design scheme for them, and then also a product list, and then they're just going to then not move forward with you. They're going to take that and they're going to go and they're going to design their house that way, and they're going to go and buy those things online, and they're essentially going to have stolen your work, and there's no elegant legal protection for that. And you would not want to sue somebody necessarily who has the wherewithal to be your client in this business anyway. The best way to do that now, if you can, is to get a lawyer who's going to create a contract where you can easily educate your client, showing them that contract, that there's value in what you do, coming up with that initial design scheme, and get you some money in the bank for that. So at least if they move on without you, if they take some of those ideas, so be it. You've been paid, and being able to crank something out like that in a time which isn't sort of as client intensive, you can also do fairly quickly, and that can be a pretty good way to make money. And there just really isn't, even for the big boys, a good way to protect you from them stealing that work. So you just want to make sure you get paid for it.
Thank you. Absolutely good advice. And Greg, how about for you, for those who think they need a licensing agent because they think they have a point of view, if you listen to them and you think, I've heard it before, give some suggestions and ideas of how you bring people down a little bit, but also help them grow themselves.
Well, I'd say get in the game. I don't know where you are in that paradigm. Maybe you put up an Etsy shop and maybe you start to sell something on your own, and real people will affect you quite quickly. They don't like it, they start to buy it, and you start to feel that surge of energy because something's really working. And then come see me. Then maybe something's happening there. You're telling a story that somebody else wants. It's a progressing thing. You can't go from one little piece of art to a licensing program. But like everything else, if you decide to get in, and as Yvette said, if there's a conversation going on and you're in that conversation, you're passionate about that conversation, well, maybe that's going to be something for you long term. And then we'd like to help you tell that story.
And Yvette, for you, a last kind of parting thoughts on things that designers should really think about that we haven't discussed possibly.
I think that, one of the things that I think can help you establish what your look and feel is and really help you develop your brand is by, and we touched on this before about really amplifying the work of other people, but really don't hesitate to post other work, other pieces of furniture, a beautiful pattern you saw in a bathroom that you were in, it's just anything that you see that really gets you fired up. By sharing that, it's going to just kind of shape what is your unique perspective and what is your special sauce. Because, as designers, unfortunately, we all know we're beholden to our clients. And a lot of the time, the projects that we end up doing are not entirely what we would have wanted to put out there. So if we just are relying on the work that we are turning out, it may not be a full reflection of what our voice is. So look beyond what is in your own portfolio and repertoire and really just, think, almost like a museum curator about what are all the different aspects and the look and feel and the colors and the tastes and the sounds of what it is to live in your universe, and just start putting that stuff out there. And the more you do it, the more people will understand what you're all about. And that empowers you so much when you go into meetings with people like Greg, to be able to say, listen, I'm all about birds. Like, I love birds, and everybody I know, who knows me knows that I love birds, and that's my thing. And that becomes your whole, pattern development is around birds and botanicals and whatever. But I think that that's very, very important. So look beyond what it is that you can make with your own two hands, to just figure out what your unique offering is.
And while I know it's COVID, I would also say that show houses are a great way for you as a designer to show your look, how you would live in a space, and that is something to really consider, even if it's a virtual show house at this point. But there's a great way to show how you might live, because even in your own home, how you would want to live, but you can't live because you have kids, you have dogs, etc. It might not be the best way, but that's something to consider. And there is an investment, but it does help brand you and promote you and possibly lead you to licensing. So I think we've run out of time. I want to see, Kim, if there's any questions that need to be answered before we wrap this up.
I don't see any questions that have come in. So at this time, I want to thank you all. It's been a wonderful discussion.
And if anyone has any questions, you can reach me easily at ellen@thehome.com. I can reach out to all of our other panelists to get your questions answered also, or through IMC. So thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Yes, thank you all
Ellen.
so
Great to
much.
see you.
Thank you.
I'll make one final point as we go. If you can, just name your design firm after you. There's only one you. There's a lot of Rue Blanc designs. Easier to popularize.
Good point, Stevie.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.